going to be very difficult to conceive. Next slide. Next slide, please. So, endometriosis, we have talked about the pelvis, but this is the fun thing about it. Endometriosis is not only confined in the pelvic area, and this is a misconception that most of us actually get. Endometriosis is a systemic. What do we mean by systemic? It can actually travel almost any part of your body. And then I gave reference to Dr. Jambi Koikai, who it was in the lungs, where it was actually in the, we have actually seen it in the eye. So every month a woman is menstruating, she also menstruates from the ears. Every time she's menstruating from the eye. Next slide. When we do cesarean section, a very small procedure, then we can have it growing on the side of the scar, and that can become very painful. Next slide. Again, I showed it can actually grow into the bowel or intestine. Next slide. This is again grows in the eye. This is a patient who every month she was getting very acute reddening of the eye, and well, the eye doctor, the ophthalmologist said, we need to take a small sample. Say, no, you're not cutting my eyes, because when we have a disease, we take a small sample, we send it to a doctor, they look at it, then they give us answers. She says no, then she's a gynecologist, says, okay, if it's actually happening every month, it has to be somehow related to your cycle. So then, next slide, let's give you some medication, and this is very simple medication, like the pills that women take for birth control, and then after that, it cleared. Endometriosis of the eye. Next slide. Endometriosis of the ear. Next slide. So, how bad is endometriosis now that we are talking about it? And that most men here did not put up their hands, so they don't know about endometriosis. 10% of women in their reproductive age. So, how many women are you here? You are about, say, 30. So, if you are 30, 3 of you have endometriosis. Is now be saying is actually data that is actually talking about it. Now, 10% worldwide, about 176 million women suffer from endometriosis. Now, this is Western world data. We have no data here because we don't talk about it. Menstrual health is a taboo that I cannot sit and talk about with my daughter about her menstrual pain, so we don't talk about it, and women has to sustain that pain, which I think is terrible. Now, this is where it's important. Almost 50% of women who have infertility, Cecilia, those women you are seeing, about 50% of those women who have infertility, they possibly be suffering from endometriosis, and that we have explained the reason why. Now, can you see, we talk about diabetes, and everybody knows about diabetes. Please put up your hands, see how many of you know about diabetes. All of you will put up your hands. But endometriosis is 3 times more than diabetes. Are we really doing justice to our women? I think actually, no, we're not. Now, the cost, this is Western world cost. The cost for treatment is quite expensive. If you compare with other common acute diseases, really high. Next slide. So, basically, the patient who impact of life is affected. See what is affected the most? Sexual life. And that's why I mentioned that God actually said, for those who are not Bible readers, go and procreate, have sex, and have more babies, and fill the world, and have fun and joy. It was actually created by God himself. Next slide. And please let me know about my 10 minutes of that. So, the symptoms of endometriosis, and this is the question. Then how do we get to know that the patient has endometriosis or possible signs of endometriosis? The commonest one is severe pain during their menses. Please, ladies and gentlemen, please leave this room converted. Do not normalize menstrual pain. It's not normal. Absolutely. And you need to do your initiative. You need to look for answers, and until the answers have been provided to you. How many of us now we are talking? The next pandemic that we are having is mental health. Dr. Muragi, I think this is what we are seeing. Mental health is all over the place. Infertility, mental health. You are divorced, mental health issues. And this is now a very, very big problem. Next slide. So let's play this. Is at 3 minutes. If it's going to play, if it's not going to play, don't worry about it. Okay, next slide if it's not playing. So now, how then, therefore, please don't worry about this slide. Don't worry about this slide. So then, how does No, the slide, please, the back slide. I say don't worry about that part, is a little bit complex. So how does therefore endometriosis affect fertility? It's going to affect the quality of the egg, the oocyte is going to affect if that happens and then development of this baby start happening, is going to affect the development and the growth, especially adenomyosis. The tube Dr. Mwagi has talked about, the ability for the sperms themselves to move is going to affect, and also hormones that are responsible for pregnancy will be affected by endometriosis. Next slide. So, what is our current situation? And that's why I'm happy that Madam Women Rep is here with us. This is our current problem. We don't talk about it, there's no awareness, there's no education about it, there's limited access, there's delayed diagnosis. Almost about by the time you catch a diagnosis of endometriosis, this woman has suffered with endometriosis for almost 10 years. 10 years of pain. I cannot even imagine. Now, ladies, let me give a bit of a simple comparison. How I've never had menses, but I'm a gynecologist. If you want to compare the pain of endometriosis, or if you have endometriosis, and women are not understanding how painful it can be, get him when he's not aware, when he's sleeping, or when he's chilling out, watching out the news, it is bikers, grab, I don't know what they're called. If you guys get divorced, please don't say it was me. That is your responsibility. I was just trying to give a comparative of what we said. Socioeconomic barriers, I've talked about it. We don't talk about it. How do I talk about my daughter about her menses? You sired her. Why? You can't talk about it. Inadequate inadequate research data. All this is huge problem. Next slide, please. God, I need to finish this. Next slide. Okay. So, do we have any treatment option? Yes, we have treatment option. It can be medical option. We have surgical option. It can be combination of the treatment. Next slide as I finish. So, this is my take-home message. Kindly, as I've mentioned, pain in conjunction with menstruation has to be taken extremely serious. We cannot normalize this pain anymore. Never indicate that the menstrual pain is normal as mothers and grandmothers. So your mother will tell you, the daughter, how special are you? I also had the same issue. Your grandmother had the same issue. How special are you? Once endometriosis has been suspected, please consult a specialist, as correct diagnosis and treatment is quite complex. Next slide, which is this. That's surgery. The last slide is endometriosis is just a weird thing that we don't understand. Thank you so much.
Asante sana. Once again, let's appreciate Dr. Njagi. Dr. Njagi, I have good news for you. If this clinic thing doesn't work, you have a future in teaching at med school. You certainly have a future in preaching at a church. I also have more empathy towards ladies and my wife because I have a comparative way to know how painful endometriosis and menses are, and I will not attempt to allow my wife to help me experience it. Karibu sana, Honorable Millie Odhiambo, our guest of honor. It's good to have you here. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we delve deeper into this fertility conversation. We now go legal. We want to hear from an advocate and a biotheistic scholar. Curious to know what that is. She's also a fertility lawyer at the Fertility Law Center. She's going to be dealing with the topic, legal procedure in surrogacy. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Ayeta Ruby Lombasio. All the way this way. Karibu sana. My only question is, what is bioethicist? What's that thing? Bioethicist. Google is my friend, but I'm sure you can tell me, at least today.
Thank you so much. Uh, the last speaker has mentioned so many things. Actually, the last two speakers have mentioned things that I am literally privy to. Dr. Njagi, I have done laparoscopic surgery, both, and also open myomectomy just a few weeks ago. So I know what you're talking about, both of you. Dr. Njagi said that we were meant to procreate and fill the world. And please put in my slide. I just have a question before we even decide to procreate and fill the world. Slide please. Bado inaendelea. So kama bado inaendelea kuwekwa, I must say that I am very shy. Please don't. I am seriously shy. Number one. Number two, sorry, I did not observe protocol. Honorable Millie, Honorable Pasaris, Cecilia, my friend, all doctors, my seniors, my juniors, and everybody, good evening. And I'm also happy that Honorable Millie has joined us, because one of the things that I'm going to mention is a bill that she has proposed in Parliament that is literally dealing with all this, an assisted reproductive technology bill that is dealing with all this provision of assisted reproductive treatment, therapy, zote. So we are covered legally, hopefully soon, hopefully sooner than later, because it has been introduced since 2014. It keeps changing, mutating, and I hope we will eventually find something. Please remove my picture. I look much better now. Next, okay. So I wanted to ask, do we really have a right to reproduce? Dr. Njagi said it is God-given, but do we really have a right to reproduce? Or do we have a right to procreate? And what is the difference between those two? And once we understand the difference, then if we say we have a right, what are the corresponding duties? Because there are no rights without duties. We know that. Also, is infertility a health or a social issue? I'm glad Dr. Njagi mentioned that there's a lot of mental health in infertility. Is that a health issue or is it a social issue? We know of women who've been left by their husbands because they cannot give birth. And most importantly, if it is a social issue, should we legislate on it? If it's a health issue, are we going to legislate on matters to do with reproduction and procreation? Because essentially these are bedroom issues. So those are just my questions, food for thought. I've been asked just to talk about gestational surrogacy. So all the other things, Izozitongeletion are experts. Thank God there are experts today in the room. So gestational surrogacy, basically my baby, your womb. Next, just continue the ones that are important. So surrogacy is an arrangement, of course, oftenly supported by an agreement where one woman carries a pregnancy for another with the intention of handing this child to the other woman once the child has been born. Dr. Murage, is Dr. Murage, right? Dr. Murage mentioned some of the causes of infertility. And some of them were things like a person born without a uterus, or having a uterus that is not shaped well to be able to carry a pregnancy. Dr. Njagi mentioned about endometriosis. Sometimes maybe you're so affected that it cannot be treated, so you essentially need another woman to carry for you. Age is a factor. Some women, miaka inaenda kama hawajamaliza kuzaa, kama maybe bado sijazaa, miaka inaenda and you cannot be able to successfully, or just because of your age, maybe not be able to carry a pregnancy. So you may require another woman to come in to carry the pregnancy for you on your behalf. And then once that has been done, you hand over the baby. Of course, it's a third-party treatment option because you're having three people here. You're having a totally different, a stranger into the mix, into this bedroom mix to carry for you a baby. So it's a third-party reproduction option, and with all third parties consent, consent, consent. Mawakili tunasema consent, consent, consent is very, very important. Anybody can sue you if you put a pregnancy in me that I have not accepted. You are violate, so I can sue you. So we have two types of surrogacy. There's the traditional surrogacy, and there's the gestational surrogacy. Traditional, next slide please. Traditional surrogacy. Okay. So before we go to the types of surrogacy, what are the key requirements in Kenya at the moment for surrogacy? There has to be a medical clearance for surrogacy. Hatujafika first world countries where, as you can see, I have a hot figure where I do not want to spoil my figure so somebody carries for me. We've not figured there. So you must have a medical clearance for surrogacy. One of those issues that the two doctors who've spoken before me have mentioned. There has to be a genetic link to one of the intended parents. This is important. The ideal situation is you get your own eggs. There was a part, somebody was supposed to speak about IVF before me. That would have wrapped up a lot of things, but I'm just going to try and see how this comes. So you get the eggs from the woman, you get the sperm from the man, the partners, the parties, and then create the embryo transfer. That is the best ideal situation. The next ideal situation is where there's either an egg donor or a sperm donor, but one of the parties is genetically linked to the child. And then there has to be a written surrogacy arrangement agreement in Kenya. It is important to note that the agreement is not enforceable per se. It is persuasive to show the intention behind the process and to persuade any other authority, be it the embassy, the court, or wherever, to show who the legal parents are. In matters surrogacy, there are usually a lot of issues, especially in legal parentage. You find sometimes you have the biological mother, who is in some cases the donor. You have the legal mother, who is the intended parent, ule mwenye anataka huyu mtoto, and you have the birth mother, who is the gestational surrogate. So it is important to know who is who and what works where legally, so that this child does not just end up without any legal parentage. Next slide, please. So traditional surrogacy is where the woman who carries the baby is also most likely the provider of the egg. Usually this is a gentleman's agreement. Sometimes I think traditional surrogacy, the first one ilifanywa na Sarah na Abraham. I think those were the correct people, where Abraham told Sarah told Abraham, please go take my slave, sleep with her. When you bring in somebody else or you decide to use IUI or something like that, and sometimes even IVF, but the person who produces the egg is also the person who carries. It is not legally supported anywhere in the world because, as Honorable Millie will tell you, this is the biological child of the person carrying. So to take away, especially in Kenya, a biological child of somebody to give to another, it has to go through adoption. It can't be under surrogacy and all that, because you just don't relinquish parental rights. Just because Ruby, my initial name is Ruby, just because Ruby can't give birth does not necessarily mean that I'll use Cecilia's body and eggs and take her baby. So it has to be very clear. This usually happens in a family setup, and it is very uncommon as it is very hard to regulate. So we go to the next one that is common. Next slide. The gestational surrogacy. Ideally, the child is not genetically related to the surrogate. This is where we have three people: the mother, the father, and the surrogate. So you get the eggs from wherever, the sperm from wherever, create an embryo, transfer to the surrogate. She gestates, she carries, gives birth, and gives the child to the people. So the first one was achieved in 1986, and it is sometimes called host surrogacy. And in most cases, at least one of the intended parents has to be genetically linked to the child. What I always advise people, or what has been passed down kisheria through courts, is if you're going to create a child, I'm using the word create very loosely, if you're going to create a child using an egg donor, a sperm donor, to be carried by a surrogate, this child is not genetically related to anybody. There's no links, there's no wherever. So why not just go to a children's home and adopt a child that is also just not genetically related to you? Why are we curing problems by creating more problems? That is what the quote says. Next slide, please. So yeah, that is how it works. So there was, with these women who are called surrogates, there are some minimum internationally recognized standards. We know sheria bado haijapitishwa hapa Kenya, but there are minimal recognized international standards that we are trying to adhere to. And this is what we are supporting as for the general requirements for the surrogate. They must be 25 years and above. Why 25? There was, when Dr. Murage was speaking, there was that fake something which I cannot pronounce. And then this person has to have at least one live birth. You don't want to put a woman through the pregnancy cycle when they've not done pregnancy. As women, we know, I do not have kids, but I know that pregnancy is just not, it's not a small thing. So you don't want to put a woman through pregnancy for the sake of another, and then maybe during that pregnancy, she ends up maybe perhaps losing her womb, dying, or something may happen to her, and then now she becomes the patient instead of just helping somebody else. So they must have had at least one live birth. They must be having at least one child who is at least 3 years. Apparently, people breastfeed until 3 years. I'm not so sure. And then medical clearance, of course, you want to see that her womb works and other things. She's not HIV positive and etc. etc. Criminal clearance, it's very important. This is a third party caring for other people a pregnancy. And the most important thing that a lot of doctors, unfortunately, I have this issue with you, is they have to go through psychological analysis. Not everybody is capable of being a surrogate. Not every consent given is informed. If you've not told this party the risks involved, multiple pregnancy, mtu anabeba watoto wawili watatu, you've not told this party that all these things are involved, they'll be psychologically what? So that party has not given informed consent. So it is very important that the surrogate goes through psychological analysis before she enters into a gestational surrogacy arrangement, so that she has all informed consent and she's legally cleared, like that she's sane and all that. Next slide, please. So before, just go mbele and then we'll come back, go again. Yeah. So this is the proposed structure of a surrogacy process in Kenya before I even go to what the agreement entails. We start with the yellow, or is it golden? The intended parent is medically cleared for surrogacy. Ruby anapatikana ya kwamba maybe she has no womb or has myomas that cannot be removed or something like that. And then there's a screening and selection process of a surrogate. I've given you the basic requirements of a surrogate. She has to meet those. Once she has met those, there's supposed to be a pre-surrogacy counseling process, especially for the surrogate, but ideally for the intended parents as well, so that when they're entering into an agreement, which is now the next thing, they have informed consent of all the risks, benefits, kila kitu. And then now you enter into a legal consult. You're given the process, the legal procedures in Kenya about surrogacy, how to register this child after giving birth, and then you draw an agreement. Then, of course, that is the only time a clinical and medical process is supposed to begin, because this is third-party reproduction. You must have an agreement before you enter into third-party reproduction. And then hopefully a pregnancy is achieved, and then birth process. And then now you register the child who has been born. Don't worry about that adoption child registration, I'll come back to it. So let's go back to Rudy Nyuma. So what does the agreement entail? Of course, identity of the parties, the fertility center, the hospital where this has been carried out. This is for accountability and follow-up processes. A guardian ad litem, somebody who, in case something happens to you or the intended parents, who is going to take care of these children, because the surrogate does not have any legal or health rights towards the child at all. I'll give you an example, two examples actually. One, why we started with this guardian ad litem in the first place, why it was proposed. One time there was a couple that had gone through surrogacy, but they were living abroad. So when they came down to get their child 2 weeks before the child was born, the lady came before the man, and she went to Shags. Ukitoka abroad unaenda Shags kwanza, napiga huko report. And so the surrogate went into labor earlier than expected. The lady was called, and when she was coming back to Nairobi, she got an accident and died on the road. And since nobody had contact details of the man, we could not release the child to the surrogate. The only other option we decided that the hospital should keep the child unless the other only option was to release to a children's home. And we know how the children's home are in this country. So it's not somewhere where you want a newborn to go and start their life at. So once the man finally contacted the center that had taken them through the process, is when he was told that your child is already here, you better come down. This helped a lot during the COVID era period, where people were locked in other countries, their children are being born, and nobody is there to receive them. All over the world, including Ukraine, UK had to give emergency passports to people who are caring for the Ukraine people who are caring for them surrogate babies so that they can go there and give birth. So it is very important. Of course, there has to be a compensation for time taken out to the state. It is not payment. Payment implies commercial surrogacy. There has to be a monthly upkeep, provision for intended parent to enter delivery room, give out the child at birth, the surrogate. Next slide, please. Provision for court or embassy attendance. This is important. You'll understand why this is important when it comes to registration. I have noted with a lot of concern that some doctors here who are doing surrogacy decide to do chini ya maji registration of children. This will affect them in future. So it is better, just do your medical bit, let law do its legal bit. Registration has never been a matter of a health practitioner. When I come to the center, when I go to hospital, for instance, and I am pregnant and I give birth, it only makes sense that the birth notification shows Ruby gave birth. I cannot go give birth and then you put Cecilia's name. It is a slippery slope for child trafficking. Next time when I give birth, what will prevent you from putting Millie's name? And Millie gives you 2 million. She's richer than I am. Hopefully, soon I'll be as rich as you. So what prevents you from doing that? Nothing can prevent you. And Honorable Millie can tell you, Kenya is recognized as it's put on 3 tier when it comes to trafficking of people and children, because it is a destination, it is a source, it is a transit, and it is a destination for trafficked children. And at the moment, as I speak, a UNICEF report that was conducted in 2023, in February this year, has already said that surrogacy in Kenya is being used for trafficking of children. You find people going to give birth, putting other people's names on the birth notification, yet it's a medical paper. Why are you lying on the medical paper? If Ruby gave birth, just write Ruby. The legal process will take care of that to transfer Ruby to Cecilia so that it is not a conducive for child trafficking. And then, of course, all this in privacy and confidentiality, and all these are some of the things that are supposed to be in the agreement. And of course, provision for parental responsibility immediately. Well, immediately, it is not immediately at birth, but immediately the surrogate gets pregnant. Next slide, please. Next. So what are the current, we say there are no laws on surrogacy at all. But what can be used at the moment? The Constitution of Kenya. Number 1, it provides for a right to form a family, and then it goes ahead, even though it's discriminative, it goes ahead to describe what a family is. It says man, woman, children. You can see there imekazia gays, imekazia lesbians, and that also goes ahead even in the Children Act, where if you're going to do adoption, gays and lesbians have also been katiziwed. And then the Children's Act provides for right of a child. Just because a child has been gone through IVF or through surrogacy does not make them any less of a child. They still have all the rights of a child. And then it also provides for parental custody, parental maintenance, and other things. People say, we do not have laws to transfer all this. But how do you take charge of a child that you did not give birth? The Children Act provides for sessions on how to go about it. So, umeenda mbali, Rudy. Bele. So what are the proposed laws on surrogacy? As I said, we have Assisted Reproductive Technology Bill of 2023. It provides for some of these things that I have said here. It provides for a qualification of a surrogate. At the moment, we are at 25 years. She must be a mother. There's provision for an agreement. There's provision for a genetic link, at least one party. There's provision for termination of a surrogacy arrangement agreement. How do you terminate it? When can you terminate it? There's a provision for registration of children born out of surrogacy, though myself and Honorable Millie are not really agreeing on how that goes, but it can be discussed later. Then there's provision for parties who can access surrogacy, the eligibility criteria. Not just everybody will be able to access. For instance, a woman of 60 years, is it really in the best interest of the child for her to start giving birth at the moment and through a surrogate and stuff like that? And then there's provision for the registration of clinics providing this treatment. There's provision for actually NHIF. At the moment, I hear it's not going to be called NHIF. There's a new bill that has come up that is totally different. It's not going to be called NHIF, it's something totally different, but there's provision for insurance in general, both life insurance and medical insurance for the surrogate, just in case something happens to them. No agencies are allowed or to profit from surrogacy, so you are not going to profit for providing people with surrogates. That also precludes people from advertising for that service of surrogacy. It's like advertising for a kidney. Please give me a kidney, I give you 20,000 and stuff like that. And then there's no blind surrogacy. A lot of people have been duped where you do not meet who your intended parent is, you do not meet your surrogate. Kila kitu nafanywa chini ya maji. Daktari tu ndiye anajua client ni nani, surrogate ni nani, mtoto penye ametoka, nini. Surrogacy is an open thing. Why all the chini ya maji? Let's just put it on the table and do it openly so that it's acceptable everywhere. The next. So this is the current registration process of a child born out of surrogacy for those who do not do it chini ya maji. A child is born, a birth notification slip is issued. It should be issued in the surrogate's name. It should be issued in the surrogate's name. Then you file papers in court. We are hoping that the bill that is coming up will make this much easier, either not necessarily filing in court or filing before, or even if it's there, it's accessible, cheap and all that. But at the moment, this is what happened. Papers are filed in court, either for parental custody or adoption orders. What's the difference? Parental custody orders are gotten at the children court. It's a lower court. Adoption is only done at the high court. So some people prefer going through adoption, and some people, because of the circumstances, like if you have no genetic link, then you have to adopt that child. Clearly that child is not yours. And then you're asked to proceed for DNA to establish genetic link as per the court's order. Once genetic link has been established, either from one of the parties, then you get your parental custody orders or the adoption orders, and then you proceed to the birth and death registry for birth certificate, and you enjoy raising your children. For foreigners, you proceed to embassy for passport and onward travel. One trick I've noticed that people are doing right now is when they're doing traditional surrogacy, unasema mimi nimelala na mwanaume fulani, we go to the embassy at it's just a love affair gone wrong, but I've given the father rights to go with the child and they proceed and stuff like that. That is illegal. Like, just think about it. Even just think about it for a minute. That's just illegal. So what are the ethical and legal issues in surrogacy? Please go to the next slide. At the core level, informed consent, very key. There's afterthought and before action and after. If you get into an agreement after you've started the agreement, it does not have the same rights as if you get into the agreement before you start treatment. So the surrogate has to enter into it voluntarily. The capacity has to be good. Some people, you just see them caring for their sisters and you don't even know if they had the capacity or they were doing it voluntarily. Maybe it was through coercion. Confidentiality and privacy, of course, eligibility. As I've said, Constitution and Penal Code discriminates against some parties. Accessibility, the recruitment process of the surrogate or the intended parent. Disclosure of risks. Some people don't even tell the surrogate how many babies they are carrying. Mtu akona member twins na hata hajaambiwa na beba twins. And then the compensation. Treat these girls gently. Please, next slide. At the treatment level, there's the status of embryo. Whose life is more important? Is it the surrogate's life or the child in the womb? If something happens, who do you rescue? Number of embryos transferred. We need to stop transferring 3, 4, 5 embryos. AC ng'ombe, sipanya, Lili, Natosha. And then the right to prenatal care, including disclosure of multiple pregnancy, and even a choice of fetal reduction. If the surrogate gets that she has 3, let her have a right to choose if she wants to reduce the fetuses to at least 2, what is comfortable, because it's still her body and she has autonomy over her body. Just because she's caring for somebody else does not make the autonomy, does not reduce the autonomy that she has. Right to access her medical records. Some of them are not even allowed to do that. And of course, psychological counseling and analysis. At the final level, I've talked about registration of children born out of a surrogacy. So while we are doing all this, let's consider the best interest of the child. At the end of the day, it's about the child. And then, of course, the legal parentage. We need to go into international standards, because some people, like in the UK, if you've not followed the requirements and wherever, they will not register that child there. And then that child is not Kenyan, because we do not give citizenship just by virtue of being born in Kenya. So this child now will become stateless. And are we just creating more problems by trying to cure problems that us adults are curing, yet creating children problems? And then cross-border reproduction, that is where these issues come a lot in, because you find we are not following laws that are in other countries, or our standards are so low that the reciprocity in other countries cannot be met. And then, of course, international minimum standards so that reciprocity is met. Others are those. Next. Data and reporting regulation, that is also in the bill that is coming up. We need to collect data and report everything that has happened. And then, of course, vanity. There was a debate if people should be allowed to do surrogacy for the sake of it, or if they should have a medical reason to do. That is still up to debate. Next. So these are the factors that usually affect ethical issues. Of course, the culture, religion, level of exposure and training, professional ethics, existing or non-existing laws. And I think the final slide. In closing, again, best interest of children, welfare of the child, right to knowledge of origin, and then way forward is, of course, we need legislation and reciprocity, policies and regulations, advocacy, and most important, networking and collaborating. We share ideas, we share the knowledge, we share all these. And let's not shy away from surrogacy and do it underground. It is something so open, so public. Let's put it out there so that people can just be doing it. Happy World Fertility Day. Is it Fertility Day today? Oh, okay. Happy World Fertility Day. Thank you.
Thank you. Help me appreciate Council Ruby. Demystifying the topic of surrogacy. Yes, here you go. Is this your pen? Good, talking about surrogacy and demystifying it and telling us, encouraging us vehemently that we should not do this chini ya maji. There's a lot of provision and opportunity to do it the right way. And Ruby also alluded to the fact that in case you're finding this too complicated, you probably need to consider adoption. And that's our topic, that's our next topic, and it's our final specialist topic. I also encouraged us earlier, if you have any question, we're going to be bringing back all our presenters to the stage after this, so that now we can entertain a few questions. Our next topic is on adoption, and this will be delivered by the National Director of the New Life Home Trust. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome to the stage Dr. Janet Mutinda.
Thank you, and good evening. It's a great honor to be here, always an honor to speak about the issues or the matters of adoption, and even now at the forefront, because of the changes in the Children's Act, to talk about foster care. the guest of honor, Honorable Millie Odhiambo, Honorable Esther Passaris, my friend Cecilia Karanja, all the distinguished guests here, ladies and gentlemen. I really hope that at the end of this, we can debunk some of the myths, some of the fears that people have about adoption and even foster care. Few slides for us tonight. All right, allow me to divide my time into two. And the first, I want to tell you a little bit about our organization. The New Life Home Trust was established in 1994. So we celebrated 29 years this June. And basically, we have continued to respond to the call of rescuing abandoned and very vulnerable babies. And it has been our awesome privilege to have cared for over 2,500 children, with approximately 85% of those children in families today. As an organization, we do not believe in institutionalizing children. If we wanted to, we would have had our homes full of hundreds and hundreds of children. So even before the new act, we were very at the forefront of ensuring that the children found their way back to families. Next slide, please. And our mission is three-pronged. We rescue, we care, and we place. We rescue abandoned and very vulnerable babies. We've always taken them at 0 to 6 months, and I'll explain why. Number two, we commit to give very high standards of care. And Ruby, I will make sure you visit our home. There's something you said there about children's homes, and I hope the video plays because I want you to see something there. We want to give high standards of care. Treat the children the same way we would treat our own. And as a rule in our organization, we always say, even if you can't get your supervisor, you can't get me, and you need to make a decision, the best interest of the child, simply ask yourself, if this was my child, what would I do? You know, many times the babies will get sick and we need to escalate quickly to ICU. You and I know 2-3 nights, 1 week, 2 weeks in ICU very quickly become several millions of shillings. But we are committed to do that for the children. None of these babies signed up for such a terrible start in life. Some of the children are abandoned in hospitals. Some of them are rescued from pit latrines, really horrific things, where you find even a mother was trying to strangle. And many times I say, at least do the honorable thing. Go to hospital, deliver the baby. And even if you sneak out, at least the baby is in a safe place. But most important after rescue and care is to place the children back in families. And we do this, number one, through biological reintegration. Immediately the baby comes in, we have an OB number for that child because maybe they were not abandoned. Maybe it was a case of trafficking and somebody got scared. And so we begin to trace and find if we can get the families of the children. Sometimes you will get an auntie, a grandmother, who will say, I will take that child. And so we do that. Our social workers are consistently on the move. And when we find the biological families, again through the children's department, using every legal way, we place the children either in their biological families, and where it is not possible, because maybe a child was left in a carton box under a bus stop, if that is the case, then using legal means, we'll place the children in families through foster care and adoption. We have 4 homes in Kenya, one in Nairobi, very near Yaya Center. People are always shocked. How is there a children's home in Kilimani? We have our biggest home is in Kisumu, and then we have one in Nakuru and in Nyeri. And our 2 homes, Kisumu and Nyeri, have a dual registration. We're registered, all our 4 homes are registered as CCIs, which is a charitable children's institution. But Nairobi and Kisumu have a second registration as private medical centers. Because many times when the little ones come, some of them are underweight, some of them are premature, and immediately we have to put them into incubators. Sometimes they come in very sick, and we need to start with oxygen. We need to have suction, a lot of the things that need to happen with the babies. And we can do everything except ICU care and surgery in our Nairobi and Kisumu home, and I hope my new friends will be able to visit us. Our Kisumu home is also host to our children with special needs. Many of them came to us again at 0 to 6 months, and maybe that was the reason they were abandoned. Very severe cases, cerebral palsy. Our oldest came to us at, I think he was 1 day old, and today, actually, he just turned 20. He has never spoken. He cannot feed himself, 24 hours on diapers, 24-hour care. But again, we say we will give these children and care for them with every dignity. When you come to our homes, number one, I tell people, don't even call me. Cecilia has been there, several of you have been there. Don't call me. At New Life, we have a walk-in policy. We want you to find us as we are. Because the VIPs are not the visitors coming in. The VIPs are the babies there. And so Monday to Sunday, from 9 a.m., because 8 we are bathing them, changing, 9 to 5, walking to Nairobi, to Nakuru, to Nyeri, to Kisumu. All right? Next slide. Currently, these are our statistics. Again, if we wanted, we'd have hundreds of children. But we want to take care of a few and take care of them well. Every year, for example, a good year for us, for medical care, we spend at least 4 million shillings. In a good year without ICU. Formula. Again, there was a big issue going on in the country about formula. And there was all this that, slay queens don't want to breastfeed. And people forget, what about the babies who don't have mothers? Formula alone, I will spend, even if you say 1,000 shillings for a can of formula, any baby, even your baby, will take 1 can of formula 3 to 4 days. So imagine by the time this baby is 6 months, how many cans of formula have they taken? But again, we will not compromise on the care of those children. We will give them the best that they can. So many times when people say that the children's homes exist for money, I look at our bills. I tell people when I served as a pastor, I had nice, long, manicured nails. Now you can see my nails, because many times you're chewing your nails wondering, where are we going to get this money? Committed to this care for the children, but also for the staff. Next slide. All right, just a few statistics for us this year. We have been able to rescue 70 children in our 4 locations. We've been able to place 51 children this year in loving families through legal means. And we have 2 children that we had to transfer to 2 partner